I thought, for Caleb, there were some good moments. There were some not so good moments. He threw an interception in 7-on-7 that was picked off by Jaquan Brisker. And there was also a pass that was thrown over the middle of the field in an earlier period that was picked off by Tremaine Edmonds. That one was, I think, either a busted assignment or something. I was miffed by where that ball was supposed to go because it was thrown clearly to the linebacker. But I do think that there have been some moments in these last couple of weeks in these practices that show you the growth that he's getting from the coaching.
Courtney, what'd you make of everything that went on today at House Hall?
There was a lot, and I was actually just telling Tyler, I was typing up a tweet of all of the things that might have fallen under the radar today just because there was so much centered around Caleb Williams and his response to Seth Wickersham's book and the information that came out. And I, of course, with my fat fingers, deleted the tweet or exited out of it. So I'm excited that we have a chance to talk about all of the things today. But obviously, number one is that Caleb came up to the podium today and did not deny anything that was written about him that came out in the excerpts from Wickersham's book 2 weeks ago. Like, I think it's a very different approach from how Tom Brady handled it a couple of years ago when Wickersham's book, I think it's titled They're Meant to Be Feared, or It's Good to Be Feared, about the Patriots dynasty. Caleb met that stuff head on today. He spoke for 3 minutes and 55 seconds in an opening statement where he did not say, he said, the thoughts and the ideas that his family and him had in the pre-draft process are normal when you're considering all of your options about where the best place for you to go when you're in the situation that he was in. And I think affirming his commitment to the Bears, the way that he spoke about how that changed after he realized under no circumstances were they going to draft anybody else, but he visited here, and that was his way of turning a tenuous situation into an opportunity. Like Ben Johnson, he views the narrative-changing prospect of, being the first 4,000-yard passer in this team's history, which he mentioned again. Those are facts. And, that's something, the opportunity he wants. That's why he was drafted number 1 overall. So I feel like he met it head on. Could this have happened a week ago? Sure. But it's a moot point now because he got out in front of what he wanted to say. He said it. He answered questions. He didn't deny anything. And he clarified what he felt he needed to in order to move forward.
Courtney, what is the likelihood that any of his teammates or any of his current coaches, this resonates with him going forward at all?
I doubt it. I think that this is something that needed to be said today because he called it a distraction. It was. I don't think it was hanging over this team, though. And I know that there's people in this fan base. It's interesting to me. It's very, it's kind of like a reflection of what's going on currently in our political climate, to where you've got a fan base immediately siding with the team and siding with the quarterback, and in the thought that the quarterback shouldn't have to speak about this at all. It's a non-story. I believe, Cap and I were doing the show yesterday, and he had that poll, and he said that I think 83% of fans said, I don't want to hear about this. Well, it doesn't mean that it can't be addressed. It's a huge story that's been the focal point of this organization for 2 weeks. So Caleb, on his accord, wanting to speak today because he wasn't scheduled to, I think was, the right choice. But as far as his teammates, and if they're concerned about it, I don't get that sense. He said that he talked with Ryan Poles, he talked with Ben Johnson, he talked with the people he felt he needed to, so they knew where he was at mentally with this, that these were thoughts that he had in the pre-draft process, and nobody's blaming him for that. But that now that that's out there, and now that he has the opportunity to move forward and accomplish the things that he wants to, that's where the focus is going to be, of righting the ship, of taking this opportunity that's been given him and Ben Johnson, and being somebody that can create quarterback stability at a place that hasn't had it. But I think it's a story that if it wasn't addressed at one point, it would continue to linger in the background. So I understand that there are people in this fan base who are frustrated by the fact that this keeps coming up. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to tell you, because it's not a non-story. when your quarterback came out and talked today about how much of a distraction it was and how he felt he needed to handle it.
If anything, Courtney, and if you didn't believe in him, and I know we have to see everything on the field. So know that. I shouldn't have to preface everything by saying that. I know that. But I think that today was a form of leadership in itself. Today was a form of, hey, this is the adversity I've gone through. My rookie year was tough. And I also like that he backed himself up today, Courtney, where he's been getting a lot of criticism about his rookie year. And I've always contended that despite what he dealt with, it wasn't terrible. And he said today, he goes, look, it wasn't what I wanted for my rookie year. No. He goes, but I only threw 5 interceptions or whatever it was in my rookie year. I also threw for 3,500 yards. No, it's not what I wanted it to be, but it wasn't a bad year in the NFL. So I thought he did a lot of good things today, standing up as a leader.
He spoke his truth, and his truth is accurate. And there's not a single person with a brain that would look at him and say, you shouldn't have felt what you felt about this team before they drafted you. And how he handled it, getting out in front of it, not turning questions down, not saying next question or denying that anything happened, I think really speaks volumes to somebody who is, we've pointed out before, never shied away from anything at the podium, and in a lot of ways wise beyond his years. This is a part of the growth process as a franchise quarterback. You don't just go out there and do the thing on the field. It's about handling the noise around you. And some of that is self-created. Some of that is perpetuated by outside sources. Nonetheless, you still handle it. And that's what he did. I felt that this was another example of his leadership in not trying to use his age as a shield or his inexperience as a shield or something he probably didn't want to have to talk about as a shield. Like, you got to give him credit for standing up in front of this and trying to take control a little bit more than had been done in the last couple weeks of a story that he's at the center of. Like, I don't think there could have been any other way that this was handled other than the way it was today for us to say that was the right way to walk away from a story that had, kind of painted this organization in not such a great light.
On the field, Courtney, what'd you see today, and how does he look like he's adjusting to a new system?
It was about the same amount of practice, but they're in the second part of their install phase. So there's more third down stuff today. There was a 2-minute drill, and you're seeing up and down moments, which at this time of year is okay. And Ben Johnson once again reiterating about the mistakes that are being made, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, this is what we expect at this time of year, but they're moving faster. There wasn't as many, I would say, like individual drills like there were last week, but to see a heavier emphasis on the team period and, getting some 2-minute work in there too, which the first one that we saw, they went 3 and out, and then Case Keenum was leading the second team today, which he has been for the last couple of weeks. They ended with a field goal, but I thought, for Caleb, there were some good moments. There were some not so good moments. He threw an interception in 7-on-7 that was picked off by Jaquan Brisker. And there was also a pass that was thrown over the middle of the field in an earlier period that was picked off by Tremaine Edmonds. That one was I think, either a busted assignment or something. I was miffed by where that ball was supposed to go because it was thrown clearly to the linebacker. But I do think that there have been some moments in these last couple of weeks in these practices that show you the growth that he's getting from the coaching. Because Ben Johnson, once again, he blew the whistle dead. He blew a play dead before they could even, run it because they weren't lined up properly. And he had no issue letting these players know that they weren't in the right spot with some colorful language. And I think that they're responding well to that because they're all talking about how much they're feeding off of that. And that's part of the growth process for Caleb, too, to be able to hear those things and go off that.
I want to play you some of that sound that you were just talking about. Charlie, if we could play Johnson, too. I think this is what he talks about, how he can be tough on his guys during practice. This is Ben Johnson on his emphasizing points during these OTAs.
Well, our biggest point of emphasis as a coaching staff was really our finish, our pursuit on defense. We want to stop the ball. the momentum of the ball running through the defense in practice, even without pads on. And so it's a learning experience of what that looks like and what we're going to be about. And then offensively, we talk about the finishing aspect of getting connected down the field and blocking for our buddies. So finishing is a huge deal about what we're doing. We're very much rooted in the fundamentals and the techniques of what we're asking our guys to do. And so we saw growth last week in that way, and that's the expectation for us going forward.
I thought it was really good, and then he talked about mental toughness. Courtney, like maybe this was in your tweet. I thought like the biggest news to come out of today was, in my interpretation, he said that Darnell Wright is his right tackle and will remain there unless something drastic happens, that they're going to do everything to let the guys battle at left without moving Darnell Wright at this point. Is that what you heard as well?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the Bears are the ones who opened the door for the idea that there could be some movement up front. And I get it. You want to keep your options open, but it never really felt like Darnell Wright was going to be seriously considered to move over to left. And what he said today, it was based on where Ozzie Trapillo lined up. He was with the ones the entire day at left tackle, from individual drills when they're going through stuff with the quarterback and the running back to team period, all of it. He was at left tackle. And that's not to say that we won't see Karan Amagaji there during minicamp next week, but until Braxton Jones gets himself back on the field and they can have a true competition, I think they're going to be rotating the guys that they have there and not trying to move somebody over to another spot and then create an opening somewhere, at right tackle. I think it's safe to say that Darnell Wright remains their right tackle because that's where they're most comfortable with him. That's out of Ben Johnson's mouth, and that's likely where, if you're listening to Ryan Poles and taking what he said to Cap and J-Hood a couple of weeks ago at face value, they want to know their starting five going into training camp. So I don't think they're going to be toying around with this, go to break for the summer, and then come back and try to have, switch Darnell Wright over somewhere else. I think he's there, cemented himself there at right tackle.
Courtney, if I'm not mistaken, Montez Sweat, when he talked today, mentioned that he was at OTAs because he was coming off a year that didn't, match up to his expectations. Overall, is that accurate? And overall, how was the attendance today?
Yeah, I think that is accurate because I asked him about the exit meeting that Ryan Poles told us that he had with him in January, and he said that he was pretty disappointed in himself. He's had got, obviously individual goals that he didn't hit, and it was a bad season, like 5-12. I mean, this is for somebody who was traded here and signed a long-term extension. He wants to be on a winning team, and last year didn't go according to plan for a number of different reasons, dealing with injury and his own drop-off in play for a number of reasons. But I think for him to be here is it's a good sign because there are a lot of guys who are of his stature that don't show up for the voluntary portion of the off season. But it's more of the way I gathered from him when I asked him about this is that he wants to learn about Dennis Allen. He wants to learn about this type of defense that does feel different to him in not a lot of ways that he could describe just yet, but it is a different defense than what he was playing in Washington and what he was playing in under Flus. So I thought that was, eye-opening a little bit, but also, they've had good attendance. Some of the ones that, some of the guys that aren't here today, like Jalen Johnson, I know typically has a golf outing for his foundation at this time of year. He wasn't here. TJ Edwards, Kyler Gordon, both dealing with soft tissue injuries, but the way that Ben Johnson spoke about minicamp next week and that he's not anticipating anybody won't be there because of injury should show you they should have full attendance. But again, like Luther Burden wasn't out there. He's still dealing with a soft tissue injury. I guess we're going to have to, get to Tuesday to see whether that holds true or whether there's anybody who has something lingering that they don't want to push.
Courtney, I want to play this exchange. I think you started it with the first question. It was the based on the Albert Breer report, and you were on with Albert yesterday with Cap, where he talked about a lot of the way that they're trying to teach Caleb and the others, and it was followed up here, but I believe you started off with a question on why you're addressing body language with Caleb Williams, and this is the give and take with Ben Johnson.
Man, there's adversity that's going to hit every team, every season. You don't know when it's going to happen. We might lose a few games. We might have some turnovers, and yet just the wherewithal of we're steering the ship, we're going the right direction. It's not woe is me. We are going to take everyone around us, we're going to elevate them, and we're going to look to forge ahead to what's next. And so it's not dwelling on the past. It's not whether it's last season, last play, last game. We learn from it, we grow, and we move on. And so our body language needs to reflect that as well.
What kind of examples have you given Caleb about body language of quarterbacks that you worked with, that you've seen, that you want him to kind of reflect? And how do you come about kind of this realization as you were studying up on him coming to this job?
No, we early in the process, we sat down and we watched some tape from a year ago, and we talked it through. It's like, do we really want to? Is this what we want to look like or not? And we come to an agreement. No, it's not. And okay, we learn from it and we move on to the next thing. So, it's body language is a huge thing. Demeanor. We don't want to be a palms up team where we're questioning every. No. That's, to me, that's a little bit of a sign of weakness, and we don't want to exhibit that from anybody on the team.
How does that apply to DJ Moore? There were some instances last year where his body language was caught on camera and caused some people to ask some questions. Is it similar with him? Have you talked to him about? Yeah,
we've talked to the entire team about what we want it to look like, what good teams do, what playoff teams do. This is the example we're setting, and this is the direction we're going. So the good news is this: we have a phenomenal coaching staff, a lot of which were former players in this league and did it at the highest level. And what they say carries weight with our guys. They know what it looks like. We have a number of guys that we brought in free agency this year that they know what good football looks like as well. So, it's all about educating, showing them what we're going to be about going into next season.
Look, Ben Johnson, it doesn't come out with just a wonky acronym. There's a method to the madness, Courtney, and that's why I've enjoyed listening to hear him talk football.
Yeah, and I think the body language thing is important because when he's talking through that and he says that they sat down, him and Caleb, and obviously it doesn't just it extends beyond Caleb, but it is important when your quarterback isn't snapping at the interim head coach, which we saw. Remember, like the final moments of that game against Seattle, and Caleb's trying to figure out, are they calling a timeout, are they not, and he's pretty missed with Thomas Brown, and that stuff gets caught on camera. Obviously, what happened in Minnesota, where he looks like Charlie Brown after Lucy pulls the freaking football away, can't happen anymore. And I understand he got rocked. That's not all on him. His reaction to it is a very human, normal reaction, but this is not a normal human job, okay? That's why he has to act differently with it. These people's livelihoods are on the line, are you going to get the players to follow behind you if you're doing it that way? Or are you going to get guys who quit? And I think that is Ben Johnson in a very eloquent way, probably more eloquent than I think many other coaches would have spoken about that with, just pointed out to Caleb, there's got to be a change. If you're the leader of this team, you can't act like that on the field. Now, again, if I have Jihad Ward coming to take my head off and there's a free rusher coming at me in Detroit like there was when Larry Borum gave up that sack, I get why he in the moment responds like that, but that just comes with the territory. If you're a quarterback on a team, you can't have those moments where you're caught slipping. You can't. And I think that's going to be something that starts with Caleb, but is going to extend to the rest of this team, to DJ Moore specifically. And I think that question that Pat asked was spot on, because we talked about DJ's body language from week 2 all the way through the end of the season. You can't have that. And that's part of the accountability that these coaches are trying to establish right away, that they don't let those things go, because the more you do, the more it becomes okay of just regressing to, I've done it this way all season long. It shouldn't matter if I am pouting effectively. But I think Ben's handled it that way, and just how he wants his quarterback to act on the field. It's not asking a whole ton.